everyone, and welcome to a new now. Before the video itself starts, I just want to clarify. Well, first of all, I don't want this video to be used as an attack on Bipsy Pop's identity as a descendant of Latina. I know that she was born and raised in the United States, and I also know that she is a descendant of Latino people, and as such, I believe that her experience should still be considered and validated. However, as someone who was born and raised in a Latina country, I feel like I have a lot of stuff to say that maybe Americans wouldn't understand outside of the Latino experience itself. I also want to say that this video is going to talk about a lot of dark subjects. I will try to include the trigger warnings in the screen right now. I'm sorry if I forget, I tend to be forgetful, but be careful of that and watch at your own discretion. Thank you. So when it comes to Hazbin Hotel, I feel like I'm nowhere in the fandom. I wouldn't consider myself a hater, but I'm not a fan either. I'm kind of just like a passive viewer that just enjoys watching every now and then and just commenting on stuff I see online. However, whenever this show gets discussed, I feel like I have a kind of a weird point of view when it comes to a lot of the things the show shows. Especially when it comes to certain themes or topics that I definitely find a little bit difficult to speak unless you know the context. So there's quite a couple of things to talk about. I'm just going to start from what I feel is the beginning, because I was actually very excited to see where Hazbin Hotel was going to go ever since the pilot hit. Now, I will say that the pilot was honestly very good outside of the sound effects, which, you know, as someone with autism, it did kind of overwhelm me back in the day, especially with the high amount of animations all around. I think it was overall a good pilot, an interesting concept. I really liked Charlie's character especially, and I was actually kind of interested to see, because I remember seeing Baggy as a character having like Spanish words, and I remember that I had read that Bipsy was Latino, so I thought, hey, you know, maybe because of things that I saw in the pilot, I thought maybe she would speak about some Latino things that were happening. A particular thing that made me get this idea that maybe Hazbin Hotel would talk more about Latino culture was essentially the constant fights you are seeing between Angel Dust, Cherry Bomb, and Serpentius for control of a certain area. Now, this is where the actual explanation for why being Latino and knowing Spanish is actually important for this discussion. This scene in particular reminded me a lot of Mexican carteles. Now, I do not blame you if you don't know what that is. However, as a way to simplify it, while I'm not Mexican myself, I'm actually a Chilean. I do know a tiny bit of it, mostly because, you know, we share language, we read stuff about each other. Cartels in Mexico, you could say, that are organized crime, and essentially cartels in Mexico dominate certain areas that are like the areas of certain cartels. Now, the politics, the government will always say, no, cartels are not a real thing, you people are just paranoid, but they are a real thing, and they are kind of like dominating certain areas for example, drug dealing, for violence, you know, you cannot mess with this kind of people because they're from the family, and stuff like that. I'm not exactly sure if that's like the most correct way to talk about it. However, that's kind of like what I know based on like the outside alone, you know. Again, I'm not Mexican. I believe that someone Mexican would be more fitting to talk about this subject. However, I do remember getting excited because I was like, someone is going to finally talk about this. And, you know, as someone who is Latina, someone who has seen a lot of my culture be misinterpreted by social media, we don't talk about Emilia Perez here. I was at least, at the very minimum, excited for Mexican folk. So, what Americans usually don't know is that every Latino country has their own different culture, their own different things. It's very different depending on what country you're from. In fact, maybe Americans don't know this, but Americans are almost the only people that really do this whole thing of races, like the Latina race, the Asian race, the white race, the black race. Americans are almost like the only people who do this. Almost every other country in the world just says, ah, yes, you're Colombian, you're Venezuelan, you're from Egypt, you're from French, you know, you're Italian. We mostly just judge a person kind of like by where they come from, like the country specifically. The word is not judge, but like we just don't talk about each other as in races. I think it's because every Latino comes from a very mixed background. In my case, I have Italian blood, I have Spanish blood, I have Mapuche blood, and I'm mostly a Chilean. So I am very mixed, and I'm pretty sure that I have even more stuff in my blood. So yeah, everyone here is very mixed, and as such, it's very weird that anyone is like, it's really weird that people are like into the whole skin color thing, unless they're actively racist. And they get called out for that, like, yo, wow, you're racist, dude, everyone is mixed here, like, chill. But yeah, making a specification like that, it's often not well seen. At least for people that are not racist, okay? At least for the people that are like chill. So again, I knew that Chileans will have like zero representation, as always, but I was for the very least happy for the Mexican folk who would maybe have this kind of like other side of the country maybe be seen in an animated show out of all things. And you know, it could be good. You know, the only representation that I ever see of like these kinds of things are in like police dramas written by Americans. So, you know, I was kind of happy thinking, oh, maybe Bibbs is like Latina, so maybe she'll show it differently. You can imagine that I was kind of sad when I saw that season 1 dropped, and there was little to nothing about the whole battle for domination of the pentagram. That was like completely removed, or at the very least I don't remember much mention of it. And yeah, I was kind of very sad. But then I kind of realized of many other issues that mostly about the world building that I didn't really like. For context's sake, I always believed that Charlie's idea of redemption was never going to work. I honestly thought that the pilot would go in a way that, you know, the end of the series would be Charlie realizing that sending sinners to heaven is not the solution, because what is she going to be left with then? The sinners, the bad people, the people who won't change? Because, like, yeah, anyone can be redeemed, but not everyone will want to be redeemed. So once you redeem all the good people that, you know, came from hell for like the serpentions motive, then what are you left with? With the monsters, which are just going to kill each other. So yeah, anyone can technically be redeemed, but not everyone wants to be redeemed. So what was Charlie's plan once that happened? So I honestly always believed that the series conclusion was going to be something like Charlie realizing that as the princess of hell, she should actually take charge like her father didn't, and rule hell as another kind of earth, punishing the worst sinners and using her hotel to make hell a better place for everyone. I always thought that would be like the final thing of Hazbin Hotel, that it's people that want to be good should deserve a place in the afterlife, either be it hell or heaven, but a chance at redemption even if they cannot change what they did in the past. Again, I don't think redemption, it's just a difficult concept, because I think there's different types of redemption. So I was more than happy with the idea of the hotel being this like redemption center where people go to be better people, and once they're like better people, yeah, they get to enjoy the good parts of hell, the parts that, you know, Lucifer never got to see, and the people that are actually bad, the ones that I don't want to change, like for example Box, they get to suffer eternal punishment because, you know, they can't die. That was what I thought Hazbin Hotel was going to go, mostly because this is something that you only know if you live here. However, I see a lot of similarities with heaven being either an European country or like the United States itself. and hell being Latin America. And I have a very good thesis for that, please hear me out. So, Americans probably don't know this, but in Latin America there's a meme called Sáquenme de Latinoamérica, or Get Me Out of Latin America. This is because sadly, most Latinos cannot get away from their countries nor from this side of the continent. This is because both the United States and many countries in Europe has completely closed the doors for Latinos to get a better life. Therefore, a lot of Latinos are born without any opportunities in their specific countries. I'm going to get a little bit more on what the actual Latino experience is like, but I need you to understand that a lot of Latinos don't stay in their countries because they want to. They stay because they literally cannot leave. The doors to a better life are closed for most of us. This is literally because we're born like this, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter how much you do, you will never escape it. That's just one of the realities of being born here. And having hell people being unable to go to heaven is something that I see kind of similar. Some Latinos get to escape to the United States, either being illegally or legally, and they do so by searching a better life, just to find out that America or any European country also has its downside. It's also bad. It also has this side thing that nobody talks about. For Latinos, people like the United States are living in literal heaven, and I've heard that be said multiple times. So having Bipsy Pop say that heaven is not the perfect place that everyone thinks it is, it kind of hit hard as a Latina, you know? I know by a fact that the United States has never been a perfect place, and the more I've been here in the English side of the YouTube, the more I've actually came to realize the reality of how things are in this side of the world, I guess, the internet world. So yeah, heaven is not the same place that people in hell theorize it is. Charlie herself theorizes it is. And again, as a Latina, that's an interesting concept. There's a big parallel between both worlds. Yes, heaven is a better place in many ways, but it's not perfect, it's not a paradise, and it should not be as idealized. Therefore, perhaps instead of sending sinners to heaven to get this reward for the afterlife, perhaps we should make hell itself a better place. There is a migration thing there, and Serpentians having a problem with adapting kinda really hit hard. Again, my husband is an immigrant to my country, and I saw a lot of Serpentious stuff in him. Serpentious adapting to heaven, not the same things, but similar things. And having no one to talk to when you're changing countries, it is something that it hurts a Latina, especially because we have a lot of migration happening in Latino countries. People, for example, from Venezuela or Bolivia trying to escape their bad situations in a search for a better life, and just being stuck with thing after thing after thing. And again, not everyone from those places is a good person. Not all sinners are good people. It's sad, but it's true. All people deserve redemption, but not all of them will want it. The same way that all Latinos should be granted the opportunity to have a better life, but not all of them will be good people. That's just reality. And I was thrilled to watch a series talk about a complicated subject like that. But as I see the series, it may be that that's not what the series is actually about. Which kind of sucks, because again, the similarities are not really... I cannot ignore them. That's the thing. I cannot ignore them. They are there. So, I don't know. There's also the other thing that personally kind of makes me upset. It's how the world building portrays hell. So it kind of shows this almost this dystopic world with Cannibal Town and drugs and everything that's bad, and it's just so crazy and it's so unrealistic because it's hell and everyone bad is here. The problem is, a lot of the things Bipsy has shown of hell are actually just very infantilized things we have in Latin America. For example, while it may sound crazy or even deranged to think that there are current cannibal towns in real life, In reality, this is not that weird when it comes to certain parts of Latin America, specifically at the north of Chile, at the more forest areas in Bolivia, and some parts in Brazil. To my understanding, the Brazil ones are mostly around the Amazons, I believe. I'm not entirely sure, but I do know there are a couple there. Bolivia, I know they are mostly around forest, and in Chile, I know they are at the north. They are often not like towns themselves. They are mostly thrives, and the way this thrives works is often not to just have this like town of people being each other with just eating each other. It's often just like indigenous tribes that have refused just stuff that comes with, colonization, and as a way to protest against that, they just decided to be not conforming to society, let's say. As such, as a way to, it's just weird rituals that they have, and the people they actually eat is not people from their own tribe. Instead, they eat people from different tribes. This is kind of like an inner war they have in each other to see which tribe is the best, and the one that dies in war is the one that gets eaten by the surviving tribes. That is a real thing that is happening at this very moment that we are speaking. There are also many things and different events that have happened in Latin America that kind of even resemble extermination, and I don't mean to say that lightly. Essentially genocide, those things have happened in Latin America in different points in time, even recent times. I don't want to get into that yet, but a couple of other things that you could find in Latin America, which I just feel like are extremely infantilized and seen from a very immature point of view and just comedy, are, for example, drug dealers. Drug dealers are pretty much everywhere. Drug addicts are almost everywhere too. They're often homeless, at the very least here in Chile, but I know that in other countries they are much common. Prostitution, depending on the country, could be legal, could not be legal. Almost anything that I can really think of is kind of a thing. Not to mention that for some reason hell seems to be way less misogynistic than half the shit that I've been seeing here. Just to put an example, today I just went out very early just to go in a park, and I was stopped and screamed at by a motorcycle, and then I was screamed and yelled at again by another man that I was just walking, someone screamed at me, I seated on a bench on a park, and another man just come yell at me, and eventually I just left. So that just happened. I just walked a little bit outside of my own place, and that just happened. So imagine how dangerous the other places are. Imagine not being able to get out of your house because shit like this will happen. Well, this is the reality of Latin Americans. And while Chileans in particular do have a better passport, therefore they can actually begin their process, although it's slow and it'll take a lot of money and a lot of patience to, for example, get a passport for the United States. The truth is that even then, it's going to take forever, and at least in my case, I can't even if I wanted to. Again, I'm married to someone who's not from my country, and we're already facing troubles. So, yeah. Even then, just like Serpentius had a trial just for being in heaven, imagine how Latinos feel in the United States, for example, which I've seen a lot of very cool stuff over there. Just to mention a couple of things that I remember seeing. Yeah, like the prostitution thing, yeah, it happens, depends on where you search. In fact, there are very, I just don't even want to say it, but let's just say that sometimes it kind of feels like Bibsy Bob's hell is better than what we have here. A lot of the times, in fact, with many things. But probably one of the things that kind of made me sad the most, that is not even acknowledged by anyone, is the whole extermination thing, and that in different parts of Latin America, there are similar things to extermination going on. Not precisely by Americans, but by the government itself from the country. It could be a very easy thing to point out, for example, the constant kidnapping, disappearances, torture, and pretty much everything that is going on Venezuela. It's very violent there, And a lot of it is done by police. The same people that are supposed to protect people are the very same ones that are kidnapping them, torturing them, killing them, leaving their bodies. It's very bad. But one event in particular that I wanted to mention, I don't remember the name. I know this event happened in Bolivia. I believe it happened in 2016, so this was very recent. Think of who you were in 2016. Think of all the things you lived through in 2016, and think that nowadays there's people who will never get to live anything anymore because their life ended there. Now, as a way to summarize what happened in Bolivia 2016 very shortly, the government decided to get kind of funky with a small, not a small town, but a city. I believe it was called Santa Cruz. They are often the ones that produce a lot of things such as food and, well, mostly food and stuff like that. Again, I am not Bolivian, therefore I have not seen these things. No, we're not going to give you food until you are actually fair with us. Bolivia is having a socialist government. It's even getting considered a dictatorship, but again, I'm not Bolivian, I'm not going to comment on that. What happened is that this kind of thing has happened before, and the government has bent their knee eventually. However, in 2016, they actually didn't bend their knees, and they spent several days not providing any food for the rest of the country. So the main place that provided for any food just kept it all as a way of protest towards the government. Therefore, a lot of the people from the rest of Bolivia didn't have any food for their children to eat. You can only imagine how many children are dead because of this. The main reason why this thing even stopped is because despite all things that, the military was supporting the government, all that stuff, even the militaries is starting to see their families die from starvation. As such, the military decided to go against the government and just decided to have what we would call a golpe de estado, or essentially just fighting back against those people, which eventually just ran away and let someone new in government, which wasn't really that different, but It was essentially extermination by just removing any kind of food they could eat. And the country has not been getting better after that. It's just one of those things that a lot of people don't even think about and they try to often forget. But it is real. It is something that happened. And it's sad that it seems like nobody cares about them. So many lives lost, and it seems like nobody cares. Think again of who you were in 2016, and think that someone who maybe just like you couldn't make it because of starvation. That's a real problem. And yeah, an uprising against people of power who've been abusing them, killing them, sounds awfully familiar to a certain thing of a series. I don't know. There's just a lot of things that feel like they could be inspiration, but the lack of anything really just feels weird, man. I don't know. There's many things I could say. For example, characters like Valentino. I do have my own personal idea of who he could be, but I don't feel very comfortable saying it. I highly doubt it is. It's just based on experience and such. But yeah, it's just a lot. It's honestly a lot. And I kind of wish those kinds of things were seen with just a little more care. I know that I'm asking way too much, but I don't know. I guess I just really don't know. Perhaps Latina people will not agree with me. Probably they'll even say that, I'm Chilean, so I don't count as an actual Latina. It's a thing about here, I guess. And who knows? I generally don't. But I just felt like sharing my thoughts. I don't know if you'll agree, or if at the very least you'll find it interesting how, my point of view as someone who speaks Spanish. So yeah, I guess that's it for today. Hope you have a good day. Don't remember to drink water and stay healthy. Goodbye. Ciao, ciao.